Now, the Department of Homeland Security has just released this shocking new info on China's COVID cover-up. Senator Lindsey Graham is here on that. Also, ordinary citizens are making their voices heard amid these continuing shutdowns. We're going to speak to one tonight. And Raymond Arroyo is here with the latest developments on the Biden sexual assault allegations and why some might want a former First Lady to crash the party. But first, my thoughts on America in shutdown day 49. Now, we have been told throughout this pandemic that we need to listen to the experts on everything from the lethality of the coronavirus to what the proper response to it should be. But time and again, the experts have been wrong. On January 22nd, the WHO praised China's great work in preventing the spread of the virus.
Actions taken immediately, especially on the market, the Wuhan market, seafood market, and followed by other actions was very commendable. And the involvement of the leadership, starting from the president himself, who gave really clear guidance, the premier and the minister, was also very impressive and different actually from from previous actions. You see the capacity and you see the political commitment. And that's continuing, and we appreciate that.
We appreciated that. Well, Tedros and the WHO, a complete and utter joke. Okay, China was neither transparent nor serious in preventing the spread to other countries, as we've been documenting. But then 6 weeks later, our politicians began making claims that were untethered to reality, like on ventilators.
All the projections say you could have an apex needing 140,000 beds and about 40,000 ventilators. We're following the data and the science, and that's what the data and the science says.
Well, of course, the data and the science were wrong. In reality, New York used about 25% of that total, and that was good news. But on the severity of the outbreak nationwide, we heard things like this.
We are your future. Where we are today, you will be in 3 weeks or 4 weeks.
False. In fact, the only state that came close to New York was New Jersey. The rest of the country didn't come close to New York's hospitalization or COVID death numbers. Well, then we were told the shutdowns had to be extended because social distancing was the only way to fight the virus.
I'm just asking them to try really, really hard for these next 28 days because they will make a tremendous difference.
Just keep it up because this is going to get us out of it. This is our best and only great public health tool.
But the former head of the FDA, now informal White House coronavirus advisor, Scott Gottlieb, spilled the beans on Sunday.
While mitigation didn't fail, I think it's fair to say that it didn't work as well as we expected. We expected that we would start seeing more significant declines in new cases and deaths around the nation at this point, and we're just not seeing that.
Well, although intuitively, I think it probably seemed like social distancing would be necessary, there was no real scientific basis for believing that, since it had never been studied. And as one infectious disease doc told me last week, trying to stop this virus with social distancing is like trying to drive a nail through Jell-O. Viruses spread. That's what they do. They often weaken as they go. And if it's like SARS, we hope it is, it'll eventually burn out, as SARS did. An observational study by a researcher at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, not yet peer-reviewed, examined whether stay-at-home orders actually prevented deaths in Western Europe. Comparing the trajectory of the epidemic before and after the lockdown, we find no evidence of any discontinuity in the growth rate, doubling time, and reproduction number trends. We provide estimates of the death toll in the absence of any lockdown policies and show that these strategies might not have saved any life in Western Europe. Well, if true, I say if, that would be stunning. And the author does echo the sentiments of Nobel laureate Michael Levitt of Stanford University.
What's your view of the lockdown policy that so many European countries and states in America have introduced?
I think it is a huge mistake. I think that everybody panicked. They were fed incorrect numbers by epidemiologists. There's no doubt in my mind that when we come to look back on this, the damage done by lockdown will exceed any saving of lives by a huge factor.
That's what I heard today at my own doctor's office, because no one's there. And as the public wants answers, well, some of the experts are hailing the results of new expensive drug therapies with middling evidence of success, but warning us away from cheap, generic drugs that have already saved lives both here and abroad. And the FDA, I hate to say it, but they got this one wrong big time. While, of course, every drug has potential side effects and prescription drug interactions, there's more than ample evidence that hydroxychloroquine saves lives, speeds up recovery time, and cuts down on hospitalizations. It's also one of the safer drugs out there just by virtue of the fact that it's been around for, 65 years? And as I've mentioned before, France's esteemed epidemiologist, Professor Didier Raoult, and his team of colleagues released the results of hydroxychloroquine in 1,061 COVID patients. Good clinical outcome and virological cure were obtained in 973 patients within 10 days. No cardiac toxicity. It showed 91% effectiveness and 8 deaths. So why is the FDA not so much as noted the work of this premier epidemiologist in all of Europe? And by the way, Chinese researchers released their own retrospective study on Friday, and they found equally impressive results using hydroxychloroquine in patients who were seriously ill. 568 patients critically ill with COVID all received basic therapy, but additionally, 48 of them received hydroxychloroquine for 7 to 10 days, 200 milligrams twice per day. Hydroxychloroquine treatment is significantly associated with decreased mortality in critically ill patients with COVID-19 through attenuation of inflammatory cytokine storm. Therefore, hydroxychloroquine should be prescribed for treatment of critically ill COVID-19 patients to save lives. Okay, well, we can say consider the source. This is from China, and it's not yet peer-reviewed. But in a pandemic, as Professor Raoult has said, with lives on the line and still no established therapy or vaccine, not everything can be peer-reviewed. Experts are not always right. None of us are. Can't be. No one's infallible. But in times like these, sometimes we have to take yes for an answer. Now, finally, about all those bad models. The experts were all over the place in projecting the virus's lethality.
We're going to bring down the number of infections so we don't have 2.2 million deaths or 1.6 million deaths.
I wouldn't be surprised if we saw 100,000 deaths. It's more like the 60,000 than the 100 to 200,000.
Okay, if you're not confused yet. Now they're saying that 120, 134,000 could die by COVID by August. What? That's double what they were saying a few weeks ago. So why is this happening? Well, the expert at IHME at University of Washington did a lot of this modeling. He explained it this way.
We're seeing many states reporting on presumptive deaths that were missed in the official death data. And now they're going back, finding deaths that were in nursing homes, elder care facilities, and reporting, large numbers of those deaths on a given day. That just means that more deaths occurred. That means the trajectory of the epidemic is also bigger.
Retrospectively adding deaths to the COVID count. No issues there, I'm sure. No issues with accuracy, except that we had one of the worst influenza pneumonia seasons in decades in the United States. Not reported very often, is it? So we're still trying to get a final count on those flu and pneumonia deaths from the CDC, by the way. Haven't gotten them yet. Very, very strange. Well, the experts strike again. And those are my thoughts at the end of day 49, America in shutdown.